we will be talking about cloud security today. For those of you new to the cybersecurity nonprofit, we are available at csmp.org. Check out our LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Cybersecurity nonprofit is dedicated to cybersecurity education and cybersecurity awareness in general. Today we have 4 panelists. I'd like to introduce you to them from left to right. Starting from the left, we have Jenair Anderson. She is a cloud security consultant here at ScaleSec. She loves diving into intricate problems and creating secured solutions for clients utilizing the cloud. When she's not working, she enjoys travel adventures, watching Grey's Anatomy on continuous loops, or finding the best brunch spot on Sundays. We have Sarah. Sarah is a cloud security consultant with over a decade in multiple information security domains. She specializes in mobile and cloud security. She spent the last 5 years focusing on cloud security, helping private and public organizations build and implement successful security programs, focusing on detection, prevention, governance, and incident response. We also have Michael Flanagan. He's a technical project manager at ScaleSec, specializing in cloud security and Scrum. He has over a decade of IT experience. Most experience as a product analyst and a business analyst at various companies. He also works with Georgia Tech with their design thinking group, designing Block as their marketing and partnership lead. And finally, we have Stephen. Stephen is a graduate of Northeastern University with a BS in computer science and mathematics. For the past 15 years, he's continued to evolve his IT career all the way from IT help desk to cybersecurity consultant. He has a desire to learn and stay relevant in the always changing IT industry, holds certifications in both AWS and GCP, and is always looking to know more than what he knew yesterday. When Stephen's not working, you can find him spending quality time with his wife and 2 daughters. So there's our introductions for today. I will stop my share, and we will get to the webinar. So thank you everybody for joining today. Do we want to go ahead and give an introduction to the folks? I've introduced, but I think it also means a lot to kind of hear it from y'all as well. Volunteer to go first?
I'll jump on the mic.
All
Hey,
right.
everybody. Stephen Adegbenle, Stephen A for short. As Eric said, I have been in the IT industry for a little over 15 years. Enjoy learning the different bells and whistles that IT security, IT in general has to offer, and here to hopefully offer some words of encouragement and wisdom to you all. Looking forward to some of your questions.
Sure, I can go next. So I'm Sarah Gori, and thanks Eric for the introduction, and really happy to be here and talk to everyone, and can't wait for your questions. I've been doing information security for over 10 years, and the first half of my career was in incident response, network defense, intrusion detection, cyber intelligence, that whole area. And when I saw how cloud is an emerging, well, not emerging at that point, but about 5 years ago, it was a problem that the enterprise I was in at the time really needed help figuring out. So I dove right into it, and I have not looked back. It's been a really fun space to work in, cloud security specifically, and cannot wait to talk to you more about it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Jump in next. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenair Anderson. I'm actually the new one into this career field. I've been in here going on 3 years. Actually started in criminology and worked my way into cloud security. So I'm excited to share my experience with you guys and looking forward to answering all the questions.
And I am last. So I started out as a chemical engineer. I did nothing with that. So I ended up in like entrepreneurship and consulting and all things kind of IT, and, kind of back my way into this. So new subject matter, but not really new to learning new things. So excited to answer questions probably from a different perspective.
Awesome. Great. So if we want maybe go around the table and how did you get started in cloud security, and what kind of pathways can you take to get into the field? So I'd like to start with Jenair on this question because I thought her story was really cool, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, so like I said, I started in criminology, and so during my degree there, I didn't have enough credits to graduate, so I had to pick up a minor. So I picked it up in computer information science. So that's where I started in IT, and I fell in love with it. So I wanted to get another degree. I know that was a lot of money at the time, but I picked up another bachelor's in cloud technology. From there, I did a lot of networking. My school was very heavy on networking. Actually got picked up by a Big Four while I was still taking courses. So graduated on a Friday, started working for a Big Four on a Monday. And from there, I started as a cloud engineer. And I always had an interest in security. So I had to figure out how to work my way through a Big Four to get into their cyber risk department. So luckily, my manager was best friends with a manager on the security department. So from the day I started on my first project, I networked, and I picked his brain every single day. What open projects did you have? What can I do to gain skills to get into that department? And through consistency and just bugging him all the time, I finally had the opportunity to transition to the cyber risk department. Which eventually led me to ScaleSec. So that's pretty much how I started my venture into cloud security.
Awesome. It's all about networking, both technically and from a people perspective. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Great. Who would like to go next?
I can go next and talk about how I got into cloud security. So, like I said, I spent the first half of my career doing traditional security, focusing on the network, focusing on the perimeter, and focusing on a very reactive way of operating, right? So, incident response, detection. And when our company that I was working for at the time started migrating to the cloud, we had to figure out how to secure the cloud just like we secured any other part of the network. So I came in from a traditional security perspective, and it was clear that it had to be done differently. You know, what you could secure, how you could gain visibility was different. And so it was a whole new skill set to learn. And I kind of volunteered to dive into it and be the one on my team at that point in a security architecture team to dive into the cloud and start figuring out what we needed to do to implement our security program there. And that's how I ended up in cloud security.
I'll go next. So let's see, my cloud security journey is not that far off from Sarah's. So started in help desk and did basically what is now known as private cloud with small to medium businesses for, I say, like a 6 to 7 year period between two small managed service hosting providers. Then got transitioned my way into a Big Four similar to Jenair, only to sort of get off track and do more networking and collaboration-based type work. Then eventually found my way back into the cloud about 5 or 6 years ago, and then made the transition into cloud security because I've always had like a burning desire to do security, especially with my Cisco networking days. So I was like, I want to try and get back into that type of work. So I thought cloud security made the most sense and have been loving it ever since.
Mine is probably more like what Jenair said from this perspective of like networking. So like my journey is very different. I think you can do, you know, people say you can do anything when you grow up. It's kind of true if you, you know, create a path and then, you know, learn the skills that you need to get there. So a lot of what my job is at ScaleSec is people management. So it's not necessarily, you know, the technical skills, but like that's 90% of what you do in any job. So I think a lot of networking, and Eric asked me to come work with him, and we worked together before. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's great to be working with all y'all. It's really cool how we each have a different way of getting into cloud security, and there's so many different pathways and so on. What is the life of a cloud security professional look like? I know a lot of folks on the webinar are looking to either get into the field or they're already in the field and they're kind of wondering what it's like on the cloud security side of things. So I'm going to say, Michael, you answer first because you've been answering last for the past 2 or 3 questions. So we'll start with you and then go from there.
I think it depends. So like I've done consulting at different places for like I did banking consulting. We sold a banking product, consulting in just different spaces. So I think one of the popular things is Scrum and like this methodology of Agile. Which means that you'll have meetings, you'll have to give updates, you'll probably have to move tickets in Jira or some other tool. And then the other side of that, I think it's just a lot of presentations to executives and people if you're working in a bigger organization or with big organizations that show them the value of this, because it's kind of like ethereal. So you spend a lot of time explaining what you're doing. And then the other part of that is you spend a lot of time tracking down people to get the stuff you need to do what you need to do. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would say is a day in the life, at least from my perspective.
Awesome.
I mean, just piggybacking off of what Michael's response was, like there's different avenues you can take when it comes to cloud security. So you can look at the consulting side of it, or you can look at the federal space, the private and federal spaces. I mean, it really all depends on where you have a calling to be. Like each of us are right now in the consulting space, meaning we on a day-to-day basis interact with not only our clients, but our client teams as well as our internal team to be able to do different things to achieve the client's business goals and strategy. So, I mean, you can also look at it from the perspective of a cloud security engineer that works for like a big healthcare company or even a financial services company. Like doing cloud security is pretty much going to be the same no matter what space you're in. It's all about how you execute on that type of work.
And if you, all right, go ahead. Were you gonna go ahead?
Yeah, I was saying part of working in cloud security. I know part of my day is part of learning through the day. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not reading documentation or studying for a cert or something that is going to keep my skills sharp. So expect to continue to learn each day when you're in the cloud.
And to kind of add on to what everyone shared a little bit of, cloud security and cybersecurity in general is also multifaceted. So if you think about the jobs and opportunities that are available and the work that you can do, you know, you can focus on like cloud security in general, kind of take a broad approach. We certainly have to be able to, from a consultant perspective, solve many different kinds of problems. When you're looking at a job in an enterprise, you know, they're usually looking to hire someone who can either do automation and engineering, or they're looking for someone who can focus on governance and vulnerability management, or someone who can implement detection and incident response and monitoring. Or so there's different angles that you can approach to where enterprises are looking for more specialization. And I guess to kind of bring that back to what that means day to day for someone like me or someone like my coworkers is we have to do a little bit of that on different days, depending on the project we're on, who we're trying to help, what problems we're trying to solve. You know, we might be implementing a monitoring program and helping with cloud governance, or we might be helping automate to solve a remediation problem. And so there's a number of different skill sets that you end up leveraging on a given day. I might be writing requirements and documentation one day, and writing Python the next day to automate something that we need to do in the cloud for a customer.
Awesome. Another thing that folks are wondering is, what aspects of consulting excite you? What gets you up and going each day as far as cloud security consulting goes?
Can I jump on that first?
Yeah, please do.
I would say the variety, the ability to work with one to many customers over an extended period of time. So it's not like you're going to be doing the same work over and over for a, let's say, 3-month period. Like usually some of our engagements are 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, where we come in, we help solve a complex problem for the client, and then we move on to the next engagement. That way, but as Jenair said earlier, you're continuously learning every day. Like Sarah said, one day you might be doing documentation, the next day you might be writing automation to solve the problem that you identified in the documentation. So I love the fact that it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. Like you don't get grunt work all the time.
And to add on to what Steven said, what drew me to security in the first place, and then what drew me to cloud afterwards within security, is that I am extremely motivated by what problem I need to solve. Like it's always been, okay, what's the next problem to solve? As long as there is something to be solved, a challenge that needs to be conquered, then that's where I'm happiest. And I find that to be something that I can really get as a consultant, because there's always a new problem to solve. There's always someone with a unique challenge, and it's always new and it's always different. And that is what I've wanted my whole career. And I loved it in security because the problems were really new and exciting and interesting to solve. And then cloud just made it more complicated at the time when we were in a traditional network environment. And so that was really exciting and interesting. And now I get to help other customers with their problems. And that's awesome.
I'll go. I think that the biggest thing I've always noticed from specifically what the work we do is impact. So I think a lot of times in big organizations, you could get lost, or people could just be trying to do something. And a lot of times when we are, asked to help out, we are actually like fixing a major issue. So it's like also knowing that you actually implemented something, or being able to actually fix something within the org, or at least give advice around, how do you fix real problems? Because a lot of times in big organizations, it can be easy, from the internal politics for things to get lost in the shuffle, and people not to be able to really, solve a solution. It's just a partial one. So we kind of get to come in and be like, we're your friends, we know what we're doing, and we can also help you actually, fix this problem. So I would say like just the impact on top of like being exposed to so many different things every day.
Yeah, they pretty much took all of my answers, but just to wrap it all up, yes, it's good to work on different clients and solve different problems. And the fact that you can solve a problem and that impact, as Michael said, that's very satisfying to see a customer who comes in so flustered, they don't know which way to turn, and then to come in and to ease their pain and remove those roadblocks for them. That's something that I look forward to every day. So, yeah.
Awesome. We have a ton of Q&A coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and get to some of those. We'll have one person who is, I've graduated with a certificate in cybersecurity, also have a BS in engineering. Where can I find entry-level jobs and internships that won't require you be a student, since they're not open since you just graduated? And I guess along those lines, what kind of education goes well with becoming a cybersecurity consultant?
I'll jump on that. I'll
go ahead.
Ladies first.
All right. So, and that's a great question. And first of all, congratulations on finishing your schooling. That's awesome. And I'll say that at this point, look for a full-time job. And there are a number of really good online job posting locations. And also LinkedIn is a really great place. I've actually found 3 different jobs over the course of my career through LinkedIn recruiters. So that is actually a great way to look for jobs. Make sure you have a really well put together LinkedIn profile that really highlights what your schooling was, what your skills are, and then anything you can do to demonstrably prove that you have knowledge and, that you go and you play with the technology. All of those things will help set you apart from the other candidates. So if you have a GitHub and you're, writing code in your free time and, trying out problems or contributing to open source projects, or you're, writing your own writing blogs, or just kind of experimenting and researching what's out there, that's not something that you need to already be hired to do. You can absolutely do that. And those are the kind of things that really grab a recruiter's attention or really stand out when you apply to a job.
To add on to what Sarah said, I mean, always be curious, never be afraid to fail, because remember, when you fail, it's your first attempt at learning, first attempt in learning. And you always want to show potential employers the fact that you're curious and you know how to go and dissect a problem or troubleshoot a problem. So always find ways to do projects on the side that will speak to your ability to do work at a full-time employer.
Very cool. And along the lines that we've been discussing, what about certifications? Like, what kind of certifications would be useful? Which ones have you gotten that are useful in the field? Or is there a specific order of certification that someone should get to work in cloud security? I know a lot of folks are looking for ways to boost someone's odds of becoming a cloud security professional. Are the cloud certifications the way to go? How about networking certifications? How much overlap is there? And I'll open that up to whoever wants to answer it.
I guess I could jump in there. So I have a couple of certs both on AWS and GCP. And I say it depends. If you want to get into cloud security and you just want to be vendor neutral, maybe at an entry level, maybe the CCSK is the way to start to get your feet wet, and then eventually working up to the CCSP. But if you want to start on a certain platform, I would suggest playing around, signing up for a free account on GCP and AWS. See which platform you like, and then try getting a associate certification with that vendor, cloud service provider. I think that's where I would start, is just getting a free account, playing around, see where you are comfortable, and then go ahead and get an entry-level cert with that cloud provider.
Anyone else want to kind of chime in on that, or how about Security Plus and those kind of certifications?
So I would say Security Plus is definitely a good cert to have because it gives you a broad-based knowledge on cybersecurity in general, which ties into cloud security. So like if you have absolutely no security experience whatsoever, then yes, I would highly recommend the Security Plus because it'll give you a broad base of knowledge of cybersecurity in general, which lends itself well into cloud security. And then as Jenair said, depending on what cloud service provider you want to focus on will determine where you go from there.
Cool. So another question is, we mentioned Python before. What programming languages are commonly used, and what are the most recommended to learn for cloud security? I know all of you have been working on programming. lately.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Maybe Michael, but
This is like an Eric question. Well, from my experience or jumping in, Python and Go are the two language I've been learning recently. So those are the two I'm going to throw out.
And I'll go and second what Jeanier's been saying. Like Python is a very relatively easy language to pick up and is well supported on the cloud platforms, which makes it a great one to work with. There are pros and cons, right? Not going to necessarily call out other languages, but Python definitely has its cons as well as its pros. It can be kind of a pain to manage from an environment and dependency perspective. But it's very well supported, and you will find lots of good resources. People have almost always asked the question you're wondering about before you have. So Googling is a very easy way to kind of, work onesie twosie through problems you might have. Yeah.
Google is your friend. Never be afraid to ask Google. Like Google will never let you down.
I know that someone asked, because I know that programming usually, deals with automation in our field and kind of like building things at scale and kind of doing repeatable tasks and so on. And this question's along those lines. How is the InfoSec industry in general, or you and your team, leveraging Devsecops and CICD? And how is the process helping you in your day-to-day responsibilities? Anyone want to chime in on that?
I could jump on that. So DevSecOps is a culture that we are constantly advocating for on any of our projects. I mean, a lot of clients claim to want to do DevSecOps, but none of them truly understand how to implement that paradigm within their given enterprises. And like when you throw in automation, AKA CI/CD pipelines, that's just helping to advocate for that paradigm shift from an old school way of thinking. So like a lot of enterprises love to do automation and CI/CD pipelines, but then when we go in and assess the pipeline that they have, we see that there are different stages that can use a little tune-up because it wasn't properly implemented. So CI/CD is definitely key in any automation that you want to do, because you want to be able to take repeatable tasks and make it so that you build it once and let the machine do the work for you going forward.
Definitely.
Just to add on to, what Steven said, just like he said, it's a mindset as well as it is, how you choose to implement security in your pipeline, right? And that mindset and getting that understanding and buy-in that you should be integrating security practices in as early as possible, and the value that comes with that is a large part of successfully implementing DevSecOps.
Definitely. And we're about halfway through the webinar now. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Also wanted to let everyone know, now that we're all here, is we do have some ScaleSec swag that we'll be giving out. If you put into a question in the Q&A, we will randomly select 3 questions and get in contact with them to send them over some swag, whether it be a gift card or maybe one of these cool clothes or something like that. We'll figure it out. Just be sure to put the question in the Q&A, and then we'll be in contact with you after the webinar. And also, if you want to ask your question in person, feel free to raise your hand on here. I'll click on the allow to talk, and we can do it that way as well. I see that we have one participant who has their hand up already, so talking is permitted for you now. If you have a question, feel free to chime in. If not, I'll go ahead and ask some other questions that we have in the Q&A. So kind of along the lines that we were talking about with DevOps and CI/CD, how do you see cloud changing the security threat modeling for organizations?
Yeah, so I'll go first on this one. There are some huge shifts in what you need to focus on when you're looking at threat modeling for security. You know, and a lot of these areas mattered as much in more traditional models, but are such a higher priority for cloud security. So identity, application security, security within application architecture. There are so many things that you might have done with a third-party tool or implementing some kind of tooling that can now be done through native features within the cloud, and can be done by controlling the identity and access control between how one service within the cloud talks to another service, or what service is allowed to talk to an application. And that connectivity and control is done at an identity level. So as you can say, identity is a lot more important, and you have to know what to look for in threat modeling for those things in the cloud.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to try to combine a few of these questions because they're along the same kind of vein. So if you were accustomed to like an on-premise environment prior to cloud, how did your perspective to prepare, or how did cloud change your perspective after you made the jump? And what are some tips to kind of help those that are deeply invested in on-prem infrastructure skill set to make the transitions into like a cloud native mindset?
Be open-minded. I mean, on-prem, although it is sort of a legacy way of thinking, it's still a valid train of thought and will help enhance your abilities in the cloud, because the two mindsets aren't that far off. It's just now delineating what you have control over versus what the cloud service provider has control over. Like the control planes are different now. So think of working on-prem as the minor leagues, and now once you get to the cloud, you're in the major leagues.
To piggyback off of that, when studying and learning the cloud, it will get frustrating, but push through that. Continue to try to make references where you understand what something is on-prem and what that equivalent would be in the cloud. And I think once you make those correlations, it will help. Not everything is copied over exactly, but push through the process of learning the concepts. It's a lot, but I feel that if you continue to just study and put some time in, it will start clicking eventually.
And to add on to that too, focusing on, what new patterns or architectural models you might need to learn that aren't the same on-prem or in a private cloud environment will help you start to make that transition by understanding those fundamental models that are new and different. And if you're working in a private cloud environment, you're already, your feet are moving in the right direction in terms of what you'll need to understand for the public cloud environment.
Someone asked, is the role you are in stressful? I am in healthcare IT. How can I get into information security role? Is there a difference between cloud security and information security?
I want to answer the stressful part. No, but I like stress. So I'm probably not the right person to answer that question. But I think, so I'll say this. I think that you can learn anything, right? So it's not a question of like whether or not it's different. Everything is a little different. Like I came from more product IT stuff. We were working in the cloud, but like not security. So it's not that hard to pick up if you have a basic understanding of like how things work. Now, from a technical perspective, there may be like more, complex things that you might have to learn. But just from my overall view, it's not really that hard of a transition. Everybody has the capacity to learn. You should always feel that way. Like nothing is too hard. I think stress comes into situations where a lot of people probably on here, and I'm making a vast assumption, like to talk to their computers and not people. So when you start talking in security, like nowadays, that's something that people are going to focus on. So cybersecurity is something that moves into the mainstream of a company, of an organization, of people having to interact with you, which means that you have to be good at talking to people or interacting with people. So that's the stressful part, right? So it's not so much a thing of like doing the work and talking to the computer, it gives you feedback. People like not understanding a concept that you're trying to explain to them, or you're trying to help them, you know, break a pattern that's causing them to be insecure or, you know, not do the right things in the organization is the stressful part. And I think that's where you have to also understand that, you know, you want to figure out how to communicate effectively with people. You can't give them all the technical information, even though you know it, because they don't get it. You have to figure out what makes the most sense to tell them. So I think that's the part about like what's stressful about any job. It's always people, not necessarily the work itself.
Okay. The next one, I think we touched on this a little bit, and I definitely have strong opinions on this one. But which platform is more user-friendly or more secure in your opinion between Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud? And I expect to answer from each one of you on this one.
I plead the fifth. I can't answer that question. I plead the fifth.
I'll give my answer on this one. And it's maybe it sounds like a cop out, but it depends. So there are pros and cons to the ways you implement security and the ways you interact with the cloud platforms for each one. You know, I could talk about the ways that AWS is or isn't user friendly, the ways that GCP or Azure is or isn't friendly and accessible, and that they're good at different things. And so it really, really does depend. You know, are you an individual who's looking to get into the industry, who isn't doing it in their day job, who's, you know, trying to break into the cloud? You know, you might find yourself, gosh, I don't know. It really does depend, man.
I mean,
I go ahead.
no, go ahead, man.
I could say this, like if you, and I read this analogy before, it's like buying a car buying process. If you want to have a car that's ready to drive off the lot, GCP is the way for you. Once you get it home, you can pick it apart. They set it up where they give you something that is usable right there, and then you pick apart, add what you want to it. But if you go and you try to buy a car with AWS, you're gonna have to go pick up all the pieces all around the town. You got to go pick up your tires from down the street. You got to go pick up. So that one, you're starting at bare minimum and you're building your way up. Now with Azure, I'm just not going to comment about that. I have my personal bias about that. I just don't even touch that platform. But I'll leave that for a different conversation.
I'll say that, I mean, I'll piggyback off what Sarah said. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, because each platform lends itself well to specific areas or subject matters. So for example, if you want to do machine learning, you're definitely going to choose Google. If you're talking about native cloud security, not that Google doesn't have a good footprint, but AWS has a 10-year head start compared to Google. So AWS, when you look at cloud security holistically, is stronger than GCP and Azure. And then Azure, I think the only reason people use Azure is because of Office 365.
Pretty much.
Yeah, Azure gets given away, so it's the redheaded stepchild. I think that when it comes down, like Steven said, to AWS and GCP, like if you want like, you know, a ridiculous level of customization and a million widgets, it's gonna be the AWS. But if it's like, you know, I can, you know, piggyback off of Google search, how they make billions of dollars a year, then it's definitely a GCP thing. And I'm not going to say it depends. I think GCP looks better and probably functions better. I think that's what Eric wants me to say. He didn't pay me to say it, but I just know that's how he rolls. With AWS, I think it's just, you know, it doesn't look sexy to me. So I just, that's how I feel about it. That's how I'm picking between the two. I know it's completely vain and unfounded in any real facts, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love to hear Michael's perspective from a product standpoint. And it's a good thing Steven spoke up, because we had a person in chat say he lives in Canada, so the fifth is not eligible there. So another thing we mentioned before, kind of like doing side projects and stuff like that, not being afraid to fail, and kind of, you know, bringing yourself out there as far as, you know, looking better for employees, like, you know, having something to show them. Again, I'm going to try to combine a lot of these questions into one. Do you have a portfolio on hand to show employees? What kind of tools can you use? What kind of projects can be highlighted? Can you recommend any security focused projects, maybe similar things to play around with, like key management service on AWS or Azure Key Vault? Are those kind of like relevant to what employers are looking for, what we're delivering to clients?
So I want to go first on this one because I want to not necessarily I want to switch the perspective of asking the question, right? So how I got here is not, you know, I'm not a cloud professional. I am, but I'm not. So when you start talking about employment and what you need to look good to do an employer, like Sarah said earlier, like it is about side projects and how curious you are, right? So I think that it's important for you to be doing stuff that you're interested in and that is going to teach you to learn something. I don't think you should ever be afraid to fail, because Steven's acronym, I'm not going to steal his thunder. And so I think that it's important for you to be trying new things and really show interest in it. And then I had somebody earlier today on LinkedIn, they reached out to me and said, hey, can I send you my resume? I'm looking for a job in cybersecurity, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's great. I don't know that many people who would be hiring. I don't exactly know the process. Like, I'm relatively new to the field there. But like, what I can tell you from my experience is like, one of my life tenets is like, always be useful. So always find a way to add value to someone. Like, no one's gonna, you know, there's a million people in a room, you know, asking you for $1 and one person trying to give you 10. Who are you going to remember the most? That's like the philosophy you should take when you start talking about looking for a job. Like, how can I contribute? What am I doing to show people that I'm going to add value to the organization, versus being like, I just need a job because I want to do this thing. So reframe your mindset from just saying like, what can you give me, into like, what can I give you? Which is weird because we're taught and raised and, you know, taught in school and conditioned to, you know, go get a job, when it should be like, what's going to give me a successful career that's going to make me fulfilled, and how do I build that relationship between me and the company I work for? And with that, I'm going to shut up and let somebody else say something.
I'll add on to what Michael said too. And on the side project thing, it's not just what side project you do, but the fact that you spend some of your time learning and playing with tools and contributing to an open source project. It tells me that you're curious, and it tells me that you think about this stuff and you're interested in solving problems. And to that end, that's a really valuable thing in anyone that I think we would hire, or I would have hired at previous jobs. And so it's not so much what tool you're working on as it is the fact that you are passionate and interested and working on it. And to that end, rather than recommend a specific tool, I would instead like encourage you to go find an open source project that you're passionate about, something that excites you, something that you think is cool, that you'd be excited to contribute to. Maybe an open source project that has a good community around it, or doesn't, and you know, just needs some issues worked on, some features added, whatever it is. But find something that's going to give you a sense of like meaning and value and excitement to work on as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly aligned to the job that you're looking for. It's also a good, so if like, let's say you find one with a good community, like networking is so important in finding a job. So it might just be that as you find other people to network with, to work with on that project, that you might find your next job that way. You don't know. So follow, this is a follow your passion. one, in my opinion.
I completely agree with that.
Can I just throw in one thing there?
Mhm.
So I would say, like, as you continue to network, make sure you find different ways to connect with the person that you're going to be engaging in conversations. Because I mean, like, to Michael's point earlier, somebody hit him up on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, can you take a look at my resume and hand me a job?" Like, a different way that I would have framed that conversation is like, "Hey, so I see that you've done this, that, and the third in your career. Would you be able to give me advice on how I can to jump into that type of journey or path?" Like, just saying, "Hey, here's my resume, want to connect with you on LinkedIn." You're not developing a connection with that person. So you're not standing out to that person for them to say, "Hey, I should give you the time of day to have a conversation with you."
And I wanna follow up on that story. So with the LinkedIn thing, I actually rewrote the phrase for the guy so he could reach out to people. And he was like, "I want to stay in touch." I was like, "That's cool. I don't mind doing that. Like I enjoy that." But at the same time too, I have a bunch of connections. I don't know everyone specifically. So just because like I have like, whatever many connections I have, it doesn't mean I met them all, in person. So like some of my connections are a little looser than others, and I can probably tell you specifically if I have a message from that person, whether or not I know them. So sometimes like with networking, you really have to add, like, you want to be adding value all the time, just so that, when you go to make an ask, it makes sense and people can get to know you. Because like I also can't recommend people I don't know. I've never met you. I just have a resume and a LinkedIn message. So to me, it says you're pushy, not to be, not to be anything else. But that's all. That's the only impression I have of you. So
Yeah, definitely. So of course we have the folks who are trying to break into the information security or cybersecurity or cloud security in general kind of field. I have some questions about for those who's already established in careers with IT that's looking to pivot into security. What advice would you give in the best path to accomplishing that pivot? And along those same lines, is the road path kind of like to get into cloud security, like networking and then going on to maybe web application security and then cloud security, or do they both kind of go hand in hand? Those are the types of questions that I have here in the Q&A.
I mean, I'll say this because I know for me personally, like, I had a ton of cloud experience and zero security experience. So when I made the transition into cloud security, I had a lot of cloud experience as a cloud architect, cloud engineer, and it was a matter of learning security. So I took that leap of faith and was like, okay, let me go and start to learn the different aspects of cybersecurity so I can see how that will blend well with my cloud experience. So I ended up getting my Security Plus to, again, broaden my cybersecurity knowledge, and then from there continue to develop my cloud security chops. So don't think of your current position as a limitation to breaking into a new field. Just see what are some of the skills that you have today, which can be easily transferred, and what are some of the skills that you hope to obtain over time. Because I would say a majority of the work we do today has a high emphasis on soft skills. Being able to interact with people is key in any field, whether it be IT or not.
In terms of making the transition from IT to security, I would say that in your current IT job, you can also start by looking around you and thinking about what kinds of security problems are, right at your doorstep with whatever, vertical or piece of IT that you're working in. Find ways to start partnering with your security teams to, improve things as you can if you have that opportunity within your current role. You can also just start research. Google is your friend. Like researching what kind of security problems exist within your current IT space is great. starting to find good security online resources for security issues that are coming out. Whenever you hear about a breach online, read every piece of information you can get on it and try and understand, based on what's publicly available, what happened, why it happened, what are the trends. Those are really good areas to start learning more about. So it's about kind of looking more around at what's going on around you, starting to build that knowledge. It doesn't necessarily immediately translate into what can go on your resume to make a career pivot, but when you're making that career pivot and you're in those job interviews, folks are going to be looking in a job for security, that you have that security mindset, that you're starting to think about things that way, and that you have that interest and curiosity.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I would.
Oh, sorry. I'll jump in. Similar to my situation, if you're already in IT, start looking within, like Sarah said, within your own company. I knew we had a security department, and I try to infiltrate my way through that department and see what was available and how I can get my foot in. I actually have a mentee. She's in IT help desk, and she wanted to get into security. We've been going at it for a year now, where I told her, start talking to the security team. And she actually has an opening up in January. She'll be promoted from IT help desk into a security analyst role. So there's just ways you just have to network through her boss. She just put out her interest there, and then started to make that connection. She now is on every project the security team is on, and she's also doing her help desk job, but it's lined up already for her in January. So be persistent and look within. Companies usually like to hire within and promote within. So that's definitely one place to start looking.
And I'll just add, be fearless. Like, I think that you don't have to think you have to take a specific path or learn something specific. Like, be curious, be fearless, and just like, go try something out. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to go to a formal course to understand something. You can teach yourself, just like we used to do back in the day before we had the internet. So, that's an option.
Yeah, definitely. So we're getting close to time. I wanted to kind of ask some of these other kind of bigger picture questions, I guess, about cloud security. So what are the biggest threats, in your opinion, facing cloud security during the COVID pandemic that has accelerated the digital transformation for a lot of businesses? Have you seen threats increase this year compared to last year? If so, are there more jobs available in cloud security? How is that affecting, the landscape and so on?
I will say the biggest threat to cloud security today, at least that I've seen in my time in the cloud, is the misconfiguration of identity and access management. Like, that is the number one thing that a lot of enterprises fail at, which is why you see so many breaches that have happened over the last 3 to 5 years. If you look at any one of those breach notifications and digging into the situation a little deeper, you see that there was a misconfigured IAM user, which was overly permissive and granted the threat actor the ability to basically break into that enterprise's system. So IAM is a common misconfiguration that we see almost everywhere.
And I'll second what Steven said, and misconfigurations in general, where people think they are doing something secure in the cloud, but they actually have something that's publicly exposed. They actually have farther reach. That identity and access control is what controls who has access to what, your data, your systems. And so, when you talk about cloud security, sure, there are still traditional exploitations and compromise, but it is a piece of the pie when it comes to cloud security. And there is a lot of what, back in the day, like pre-cloud times, would call a breach, where there was compromise and exploitation, a vulnerability with a CVE was exploited. And that's just a piece of it now, because so much is kind of even lower hanging fruit for attackers, because they can just look for misconfigurations and find things they can just access directly or manipulate with relatively low effort. And that's been a trend for the past couple of years.
Yeah, this is good. So I got another question. What's the best training sites for cloud security? Would you recommend Udemy, YouTube? Personally, I recommend like Linux Academy and Wiz Labs. But what do y'all think?
I
Ask
mean,
Jenair.
similar.
Ask,
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was saying, ask Jenair. She knows. She knows.
Oh, I use Linux Academy and Udemy, but also when I need a specific answer, Google and YouTube. So wherever you can afford, go with that one. But there's a lot of resources out there, so I highly recommend Linux Academy though.
I mean, to piggyback off what she said and to what we said earlier when we were trying to figure out, when we were giving answers about who's the best cloud provider, it really depends on what your learning style is, because every learning platform will cater to somebody. Like it's about what works best for you. Like there's Linux Academy, there's A Cloud Guru, you have a bunch of courses on Udemy, you have a bunch of courses on Cyber, you have a bunch of courses on Pluralsight. It's all about where you feel you will learn best based on your learning style. Because we can recommend a whole bunch of different resources at the end of the day, but they may not be for you. You have to figure out where you think you're going to learn the best and leverage that particular resource.
Steven's next career is in politics.
Nah, man, I can't do it.
All right, and then last question for now. We'll cut off the webinar after this question, but we'll probably hang around after the webinar because there's so many questions that people have. Well, at least I'll hang around. No one else has an obligation to hang around. So seeing the trend of cloud ecosystem growth, how do you see the cloud security industry changing in the next 5 years?
I want to say, from just coming from like a product background and perspective, everything uses the cloud now. You know, everybody wants to be connected everywhere. They got smart trash cans, they got smart doorbells, they got smart everything. So that means that somebody's gonna have to tell people that they can't, you know, they can't just throw something together. It's got to be properly secure. Otherwise, people, you know, end up with Ring doorbells to get hacked, or people are talking through cameras and freaking people out because of lack of security. So like, it's gonna get bigger. I don't see it getting any smaller. I think that a lot of legacy systems and stuff is moving that way, especially with like machine learning and recommendations and the pandemic. Even like, we now live digitally more than we do period anywhere else. So a lot more opportunities for people to learn these skills, and also like companies are just going to move everything, you know, to the cloud to offset resources, to make it more efficient, to, you know, do a lot of these things. So it's going to keep going.
Great. All right. Any last kind of concluding thoughts as we wrap this up?
I mean, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, you know, around the theme of finding jobs in cloud security and cybersecurity, I would say don't be afraid to just put yourself out there and apply to jobs, try new things, explore projects, you know, spend some time reading and keeping track of the sources online. You know, I really like Krebs on security for just general security stuff. The cloud platforms themselves all have good security blogs about their platforms. And, you know, just dive into it. No one's ever going to tell you can't apply for a job. You know, the worst that's going to happen is you're not going to get it, or you might not get an interview. And I think I read a study last year that said that most people will choose to not apply for a job if they don't meet like up to 80% of the things that are listed out on a job rec. You know, when we write job recs, we are trying to write it to get the most well-rounded candidate possible. So don't be afraid to apply, because we know that perfect candidate can be tough to find, and you might be that person that fits the bill enough that we want to hire you or bring you in. So definitely take that chance and apply to jobs that sound interesting and exciting, even if you think you're not perfectly qualified.
Awesome. All right, well, we're at time. Again, I want to thank our panelists, Steve, Jenair, Michael, Sarah, ScaleSec. Thank you so much, everybody, for the panelists. Thank you, everybody, for the Q&A. We'll be in contact with the 3 random people that we choose that submitted some questions. You know, we have Wednesday webinars every Wednesday. We have another one next Wednesday, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock Pacific, 7 Central. Please check us out. And if you're interested in volunteering at the cybersecurity nonprofit, visit us at csmp.org, fill out that volunteer form, and let us know what you're interested in. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.